Hey everybody, welcome to Trading Capital's daily live stream of the market open. Today is currently May the 3rd, and as we kick off a wild week in another trading session, we obviously have the long-awaited FOMC day today. So we get the rate hike at 2 and then the FOMC press conference, which is generally the bigger market-moving event at 2:30 when we hear from Powell. We also have a bunch of economic data. We had payrolls come in that came in way better than expected, showing more resiliency in the labor market. That is probably going to give Powell ammunition to be a little bit more hawkish. But in terms of other data, we also have coming out at 9:45 the S&P Global PMI. We have the ISM non-manufacturing at 10. And then we also have crude inventories at 10:30. And there's some few trades that I'm watching right now. In terms of what we have on the radar, oil is getting demolished right now. So WTI continues to fall. That's the wrong one, I guess. We'll do this one. Oh yeah, this is the 5-minute chart. My apologies. Alright, so WTI crude under an immense amount of pressure. Immense amount of pressure this morning. So what we're looking at is a potential long on crude. And maybe crude is signaling weaker PMIs, maybe weaker crude inventories. Time will tell though. But we're looking at a long on crude. Basically, I'm actually going to be playing the USO. And the level that I have on the USO is really only intrigues me if we get a flush down to this $60 Pierce level. So 59.97. And then obviously we'll have this double bottom support zone on crude. So that's really the levels that I'm watching. It's interesting to see the price action in crude because it is generally a leading indicator for the economy. A big level I'm watching on crude is, do we break this trend line? Again, that's going to be the big level for crude, connecting your multi-pivot zone, and there should be some decent support if we flush into that trend line today. So that is a long trade. You can simultaneously, if crude oil gets a bounce, we can simultaneously look. I've got a couple stocks on the radar. XOM is on watch for a long trade, so we just covered our short yesterday. Let me just remove that. But XOM, you can see it's coming down. It's trading at 108.78. I would be more inclined to take it at around the 200 daily moving average. So I'll just put a little bit of a line there at the 200, and I'll remember the color. So a long trade on XOM right around that 200 level. There is even a better level at, let me just see here. Yeah, that's pretty much the level that I would take it at. That 200 moving average. Potentially, maybe if it flushes and breaks 105.50, 104.99 area. But that should be decent support for XOM. It's likely going to coincide with this upsloping trend line. So we'll just pay attention to that. Right now the dollar is under pressure today again. Despite that pop on the payrolls there, the dollar is still weak heading into the Fed. So that's interesting to note. We're also looking at EL. SD Lauder is getting absolutely slaughtered. We actually touched base on this in one of our daily analysis videos. I was hoping to wait for an earnings pop. We never got the pop, but we sure did get a drop. Wow, what a bearish pattern on SD Lauder. And this is one of the consumer staples that was significantly lagging the market. So we'll just put that trend line in there. And basically the level that I have on SD Lauder is around the 191 Pierce. 191 Pierce. That's the level I'm prepared to take. So I'll just put a trend line in. I'll just put it there. I'll move it up just a slight. So 191 Pierce long on SD Lauder. You do have a technical gap fill. That should be some support, but again, this is a weak name. You may see some margin calls, and look at this beautiful little head and shoulders trigger. So your left shoulder, your head, your right shoulder, that will be triggering today. Obviously, if it rallies back and recaptures the neckline, it's invalidated, but take a look at that measured move pattern. That's how I'm getting these levels. And then I also have the 365-day moving average, the 1-year moving average right in this vicinity. So that's where I'm going to play this one on the long side, because it will complete a measured move if it gets down there. You're obviously having AMD week today. AMD's an interesting play. Let me just remove all of these drawings. AMD is interesting because you have that same head and shoulders pattern on watch for a trigger. And really the downside target, if you get a close below that neckline, takes you down to about this. I don't think it's going to happen today. I really don't think. Unless Powell really clobbers these markets, I really don't think AMD is going to fall down here. That would be that would be something else, that's for sure. But nevertheless, we're looking for some long trades on AMD. It's too close, and basically if we see rejection at that neckline, maybe we can play out on the short side. I am looking at, just bear with me here. Just looking at that. So this was your big earnings impulse move, this gap up and fill. So I would like to see it probably flush into this pivot zone over here if I was to consider a long trade. You may get a bounce off of this reversal zone over here, because this is kind of where you had a big pullback. It looked like you were putting in bearish consolidation, and you had a big breakout retest right on this pivot. So around the daily 200, this pivot is kind of where I would play AMD on the long side, and we're looking at maybe 78. That's a pretty big flush from where it is, but it's already down, I think, 7-8%. So again, that's a pretty big flush. I don't know if it'll hit there. You do have a technical gap at around 82, which I do believe it hit at some point in the pre-market, but that should be some additional support there. Maybe you get a bounce off the 100, but again, I'm not really liking this chart because it hasn't made that, although it's gapping down and making a pretty big move, it hasn't really made that big of a directional move. It's coming into this cluster of moving averages, so there's always room to fall for this stock, especially if we get a bearish close underneath this upsloping neckline. We're also looking at Eli Lilly for a short, so that's gapping up. LLY is the ticker. It actually hit all the way up in the pre-market. Let me just look at my notes here. We actually hit 441.95 in the pre-market. I mean, that's an exceptional move for this company. 441, and they're announcing potentially a drug that helps mitigate the deterioration of the brain in Alzheimer's. So they've had about, I think it was a 40% efficacy success rate. So obviously that's popping on the good news. But go figure, they announced that. You did get a bad earnings report. The stock is already extended. Now you're gapping up. This is a fade play. Basically, the level that I'm looking at is anything above, we're trading at 420 now, so you can see it's had a massive pullback already. I would love to see it anything above 430. 430. I don't know if it's going to get there, but 430 is definitely a little bit more intriguing. You can see that it would pierce this upsloping trend line, which we're into right now, but definitely a fade play on the market. Natural gas is under pressure today again, along with the whole energy sector. Valero's at a decent level for a potential long. So the low in Valero was 108.23. I would want to see it come a little bit lower to potentially fill this gap down here at 106.81 for a potential long trade. But keep Valero on watch because it is an interesting name to potentially play on the long side. We'll just have to be patient and wait for that. You will have some additional pivot support with this major zone and topping over there. So we've got quite a few stocks to pay attention to. Obviously the data is going to impact the markets. Take a look at EL. It's coming down hard right now. It is actually trading at below 200 and it's falling sharply here. Uber is also on watch for a potential short. It's had a parabolic move to the upside, and basically if Uber was to get up into this double top, we could short Uber. But EL is going to be interesting here because this is coming down pretty sharply. We have about 5 minutes left till the open. So 5 minutes till the open, and we will be set to begin this trading day. I'm only going to stay on air for about until just a little after 10, a few minutes after 10. So plan your trades accordingly. Oil's still weak. Watching oil closely. Natural gas just made a new intraday low. Go figure, that thing just can't get out of its own way. Down 3% on the UNG. It's crazy. It's pretty crazy. So Apple's positive on the session, Microsoft's positive, Tesla just slightly turned negative, McDonald's is slightly negative, Coca-Cola is slightly negative, AT&T is up, Freeport McMoran is down. The VIX is slightly up on the session. You also have Starbucks gapping lower, so that's an interesting one to pay attention to. The only real level I see on Starbucks is if we got a move. Let me just do a quick check here. If Starbucks was to flush into 103, pierce of 103, we could play it on the long side. You do have a gap fill down here. But Starbucks lowered guidance yesterday, so they're a leading company. Typically, businesses in the coffee business are really recession proof, so it's interesting to see that they're guiding down today. We'll keep the SPY on that screen over here. I am going to move it to the regular trading hours so we can see the gaps. Nvidia's falling a little bit. It was interesting, Nvidia got a fake print on my screen. I don't think it actually happened, but in the regular trading hours, look at this print on Nvidia. That's a 6% decline. Keep EL on watch. Keep EL on watch. Alright, EL's coming down, so it's going to be the opportunity to go long. Nvidia's had a nice decent fall in the pre-market. Alright guys, get ready for some crazy action here. 1 minute and 17 seconds. Alright, we've about 50 seconds here. Uber's popping. Alright. EL keeps coming down. Oil's still weak. We'll see if AMD catches a bid at all. That one's definitely going to be an interesting one. But that 78 I do like. Pierce of 79 bucks I do like for a potential long. Alright guys, EL's coming down. EL is coming down. We'll see if we can get an open hit of this level. Markets are open. Uber's pushed up. EL's bouncing. Markets are getting a big push here. Sorry, I'll mute my screens here. Uber's pushing up, guys. Uber is getting a big push. Spiders are pushing up here. Big push on EL. Ah, that's off the table right now, guys. Let's look at Uber. What a bounce on EL. That's unfortunate we didn't get filled on that. Still watching oil. Uber didn't quite hit the level. AMD's catching a small bounce off the lows. Nvidia's down on the session pretty nicely right now. Will we see some selling take place? If EL flushes down to 191, it's valid again. Eli Lilly's pushing up. We're still watching that one for a potential. Nat gas is falling sharply lower here. USO's on watch still. Microsoft reversed and just went negative. Apple's still surging higher. Spiders are trying to get over this resistance level. We'll see if they can. Nvidia's pushing up. EL's pushing up. PACW's down again. Intel soaring and roaring. Chegg is up today. Generac is soaring and roaring. It was actually low. Amgen is getting a big push. Actually a fall here. So Russell's acting well. Keep a look at the spiders there. Qs are pushing up. I'm still interested in a potential Uber short here. So spiders are pushing up here, guys. AMD's starting to catch a bid. Uber's pulling in. Apple's soaring and roaring, piercing that, attacking that 170 level. IWM's holding up well. So we're just settling in, seeing how things open. We'll see if we see any profit taking. We will see if we see any profit taking ahead of this. Nvidia is seeing more sell side pressure. XOM seeing some pressure. Uber's now coming in. Let's keep our eye on the QQQ here. They're acting a little weak as well. Apple's still surging up higher. No real trades yet. USO is coming back down, guys, so we may have a long trade on USO. I am eyeing up a potential long on USO. Now gas is trying to bounce. The spiders are also trying to bounce. 10-minute topping tail forming on Uber. Apple's above 170, so it's going to be difficult for this market to fall when Apple is still remaining so resilient. Keep Starbucks on the radar. 104.50. 104.50. I do like Starbucks for a potential. AMD's getting a nice bounce off the lows, trying to recapture that neckline. We will see. It's a big level for AMD. Spiders are still just hovering. AMD's now down 5. It's struggling at that neckline, but Apple's ripping. So AMD is struggling at this neckline. You can see the sellers are coming back in. Nvidia is still down. Tech is trying to get a little bit of a bid. Eli Lilly's still off of our level. Nike gapped lower today. Crypto's under a little bit of pressure. Spiders are still just hanging in there. So I think for Uber, since it's had a reversal candle on the 10-minute chart, if we get a retrace, we can play this on the short side on Uber. So 50% retrace or more, anything above say 36.90. I want to see the 10-minute close though. Right now it's fighting to go higher because you are seeing the spiders and tech trying to push up here ahead of Powell. Uber's pushing back up here, guys. No short yet. Take a look at the WTI here. It's still falling, so I am interested at this USO, but it needs to get down to about, have a technical gap fill coming up at a Pierce of 61. A Pierce of 61, we have a technical gap coming into play here. Alright, so I may start accumulating oil there. Just let it flush down a little bit more. Nvidia is starting to soften up and weaken some more. Interesting to see Nvidia falling now. It's down 1.5. Let's take a peek at AMD. Still struggling at that neckline. Lots of distribution. Alright guys, I'm shorting Uber here, 37.04. 37.04 short Uber. It's a 1/5 position. 37.04. Next ad level will be up here around 37.57. We'll see though. Markets are starting to come in. AMD's weakening. So AMD is now coming down. We may have a long trade on AMD because it's getting rejected at that neckline. Nvidia's falling a lot sharper now. Still watching USO. Regional banks are catching a bid here today, but the bigger banks like JP Morgan are under pressure. So I find that a little bit of an interesting dynamic. Uber's starting to push up some more here. Spiders are still holding up here, guys. Spiders are still holding up. Spiders are trying to get another bid here, guys. Spiders are trying to get another bid. Uber's coming down now. Uber is coming down. Let's see if we can get a flush down to this 36.21 level. EL is coming back down, guys. So after EL got that big bounce, it is coming back down. So I do like it at a Pierce of, let me just see here, 191, a Pierce of 191. Starbucks is still coming down. I'm watching that on my other screens. AMD's reversed off the highs and falling pretty precipitously here. Uber's still hovering at the highs. Nvidia's falling more. And again, there was a fake print on Nvidia that I find interesting because it's really interesting to see that it had a 6% drop, but I don't think it actually happened. Maybe it's to come. So spiders are actually hanging in there. Spiders are just hovering at that resistance trend line here, trying to make a move. There's clear distribution there, but I don't imagine the markets are going to make a big trend change. Microsoft's coming down more now, guys. Microsoft is coming down more. Nvidia's falling sharply lower. It's now down 2%. in sympathy to AMD down 7.45. And now the bank stocks are rallying, so KRE is pushing up. Still interested in oil, but it hasn't quite hit my level. JP Morgan's still negative. Regionals are catching a bit, but the bigger banks are lagging now. So I find that interesting. Meta's falling sharply. Take a look at AMD still. AMD, we may have a long trade if it flushes down to, look at this hourly chart here. If we get a flush down to 81.20, give or take around that area, we can go long AMD. 81.20. 81.20. AMD is coming back down, guys, so keep that on a window open. EL is also coming down. We're slightly in the money on our Uber. EL's coming down. Let's see if we can get a fill on EL on the long side. But that was a big bounce. It's riskier now because it did yield a big bounce. Starbucks is still coming down. I like the 104.50 Pierce level. 104.50 Pierce. Nvidia is still under pressure. Spiders are trying to bounce here though. Tesla's having a big move to the upside. Home builders are still resilient today. Meta's still hanging on to positive gains. So again, will we see people hold into the Fed meeting? Usually that's typically not likely, but you never know. Uber's still fighting here. Some clear distribution is occurring on Uber. Nvidia is trying to get some buyers coming in here, but it is fairly weak right now. Alright, Uber's coming down now, guys. EL, AMD, oil's still holding up. Let's do a Lilly check. LLY is near the high of the chart, still off of our level, but I am intrigued about Eli Lilly for a short if it hits our level much higher. So Microsoft is negative, but Microsoft's just hanging on to some positive gains, but it is looking weak considering it gapped up and reversed. Apple's just making a new 52-week high. Apple just made a brand new 52-week high. That's incredible. I think clearly money is flowing out of AMD, Nvidia, and straight into Apple. Because again, Apple's one of the cheaper mega caps compared to Microsoft, compared to Nvidia. So it's interesting to see that. But Apple's lifting this market alone. It's keeping this market buoyant. Amazon's up 1.3, Tesla's up 1.3, Ford is down. Intel's hanging on to some 3% gains. That's pretty impressive. Chegg is up 11%. Let's see if Uber can keep coming down, guys. Uber's still hanging on. AMD's catching a bounce now. Apple's keep surging. If Apple was to hit 171.25, 171, yeah, pierce of 171, we could go short on Apple. EL's coming back down now, guys. Keep EL on the radar. Keep EL. Because we got a big bounce, I would have to maybe lower my target down to, Oof, it's so tempting here. It's so tempting. Maybe double bottom. It's higher risk because we got such a big bounce. But it is hitting that downside target. So the Qs are trying to push up here. All right, USO just hit my technical level on USO. I'm about to go long oil here at 60, 90. Let me see. I'm not filled yet. Let's see if it can make one more little dip. I want it a little bit lower. And AMD's even selling off now. Some more. Actually, you know what? I'm going to scratch USO. I don't like it ahead of those inventories at 10:30. That kind of scares me. I totally forgot about that. But EL's still on watch. EL's still on watch. The spiders are seeing some near-term distribution. AMD's coming down into a gap fill. I like it a little bit lower. The extreme level I'll take on USO is around 59.83. 59.83. That's where I would take USO. Nvidia's still coming down. Uber's still coming down. We're slightly in the money on Uber. But definitely keep EL on watch here because it is hitting my downside. Let's see if we can pierce this 191. Let's see if we can pierce 191. I'm going to go lighter share size because it is high risk and it did yield a bounce. But let's see. It's very close. It's hitting good support right now. It's hitting decent support as of now, and the spiders are still holding up, so we haven't really got a big directional move yet. Microsoft just went negative. All right, EL, I am long EL here at 191, long EL. All right, so EL's even flushing a little bit lower now, but we're long at this 191 area. The next ad level on EL. Spiders are holding up still here. Next ad level is 188.78, but we're getting a small bounce here. We are getting a small bounce. Uber's starting to see some more distribution. Meta just turned negative. Nvidia's at the lows. Apple's seeing some sell side, but the spiders are pushing up. That's interesting. Very, very intriguing. In terms of EL, I think we can look for about $1.50 or more. $1.50 or more. AMD's getting intriguing here, guys. AMD's hitting the gap fill. I like it at a pierce of 81.20 on a long trade on AMD. But it is coming down some more. Spiders are still pushing up though. And it's primarily being led by the banks. Let's see Starbucks to see. Starbucks is still off of our level. AMD still falling. The dollar's trying to see if it catches a bounce. All right, guys, here we're getting a pretty big bounce here. Again, I'm looking for a sell around 192.70, 192, 193 around that area. Look at this push on EL. Come on. Here we go, guys. Look at this bounce. Look at this bounce. I'm still in. I'm still in. All right, I'm selling here 192.76, 192.76. Boom. That is a $2.78 profit. I had 100 shares. It was just a starter position. But that is beautiful. Beautiful trade there. All right, I do not like it right now anymore because it had its bounce. The next extreme level would be around the double bottom zone. The double bottom zone around 186.71. 186.71, around that area we can play it again. But let's look at our Uber trade. Uber's still hanging on there. I'm still looking at oil. We have more data coming out in 9 minutes. That should be intriguing. Spiders are acting well though here. Spiders are pushing up. Spiders are fighting that resistance. So ahead of the Fed, it's interesting to see the spiders ripping and roaring here. Natural gas is still lagging. Some of the bigger banks are starting to catch a bid. Valero's still on watch. Pinterest is still on watch. Let's look at ALGN. ALGN. Let's look at ANET. That's interesting. And if ANET flushes to 130.24, we can look for a long. ANET is the ticker. Wow, look at this bounce on EL. What a rip-roaring bounce. That's okay though. We banked our profits. And again, I'm interested in AMD still here, but it needs to hit this extreme downside level of around 8107. Amazon's ripping here, up 1.8. Tesla's up 1.8. Pac West is up 14.1. Big move on Pac West here. Markets are catching a bounce here. Let's keep AMD on watch here. So AMD is catching a bounce. Let's take a look at the semis. Semis are starting to catch a bid as well with the whole market. So now the whole market is starting to rally. AMD right back down though. Oil's still weak. I'm still intrigued about oil around the USO around 59.83. 59.83. It's interesting to see it hasn't got a bounce yet. Obviously we're still watching Uber, which is seeing distribution at those levels. Spiders are pushing up here. Apple's still at the highs. EL has had a massive bounce. EL is still bouncing off our level. $3.66 bounce. That's insane. That is insane. Spiders are pushing up here. Apple's still nearing the highs. AMD's falling a little bit more now. Home builders are friggin' so powerful. They just don't see any sort of pullback in the home builders. So Starbucks bounced off of the level. Netflix is trying to go positive here. Nvidia's getting a big push. Uber's coming back down now. So Uber may have an hourly topping tail. You're getting one forming on the 30-minute chart. Dollar's still weak today, despite the strong employment data. So USO's coming down, guys. Keep USO on watch because I am intrigued at this level down here. This 59.83 is actually the level. So we'll keep that on the radar. AMD is still seeing more selling. Uber, we're slightly in the money on that trade. Basically in the money about 32 cents, just under 1%. Spiders are still acting well, pushing up near the highs. Apple's acting so resilient, 170.85. It's pushing to new 52-week highs. It's lifting the spiders single-handedly. Obviously, Amazon is helping, and Tesla's helping. But AMD and Nvidia is certainly not helping. SoFi is down again. Maybe a long trade on SoFi. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not seeing anything. Pins. Whoops. Pins is at an interesting level here. This is support. Little breakout. ALGN. ALB. That's got a big gap up. Let's look at ANET. ANET's coming down some more. So it's almost that 10 o'clock time frame. Spiders really haven't seen a red candle yet. It's been straight upside in the spiders. Q saw a little more distribution, but it's been straight upside in the spiders. Alright, Uber's coming down here, guys. Look at this drop on Uber. This is nice to see. Alright, I'm covering here 36.55. Cover on Uber 36.55. That's a beautiful win. That is a $1.51 win. Awesome trade there. Awesome. That was a nice little win. I had 300 shares there, so that's beautiful. Beautiful win there on Uber. So 2 for 2. Now we're just going to sit back. We'll watch the SPYs. We'll watch the Qs. We'll watch AMD here. We're watching oil as well. Still watching EL. If EL was to get down to 186.71, I would look to potentially go long. Oh, look at this weakness in nat gas. I mean, it's down again. Just getting pummeled. I mean, down another 3.5%. It's insane the amount of liquidations going on in nat gas. So Nvidia's still trying to bounce. Home builders are friggin' resilient here. Just pumping. So the tech is now starting to lead this market. QQQ is starting to lead to the upside. And that's because of Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon. Microsoft just turned back to the positive side here. So after it saw some distribution, it's now positive. But again, AMD is still acting weak. So the semis could mean that tech could see some downside. PMI out in 1 minute. So PMI out in 1 minute. Watch that dollar. The dollar's trying to catch a small little bid here. Nat gas is weakening some more. Might be a little bit of a long trade on nat gas. Around. We'll just wait for the data to come out. Keep the spiders on watch for that data. And the dollar. So PMIs are going to heavily influence the dollar, and they're going to heavily influence the markets. Industrials, energy. Look at this pump. PMIs might be coming in better than expected, which should spike yields. Dollar's starting to push up here. Dollar is starting to push up here. Let's see if it holds though. It's finding some near-term resistance. So the PMI is out at 53.6, basically 0.1 lower than expectations, but the ISM is 51.9, 0.1 better than expectations. So it's really not it's nothing event as of now. Nothing event as of now. So that wasn't too crazy. That wasn't too crazy bad. The dollar's reversing, so that's going to help the markets. You can see the dollar falling yet again. It just can't get out of its own way. Just can't get out of its own way right now. So the spiders are trying to push up. The Qs are really still leading this market with Apple. AMD is testing the lows. Nvidia is off the lows. So spiders are starting to push up here, guys. Big push on the spiders coming in. Dollar weakness is helping. Qs are looking to consolidate and move higher, but again, ahead of the Fed, It's pretty dangerous holding significant longs. Shorts too, I guess, but considering how elevated we are in the markets this year, I would say the risk to reward favors the downside. Pinterest is still ever so weak, trading near the lows of the session. That one's interesting. I may look for a long trade on Pinterest because it is more oversold than some of the other names. Next data set is the inventories. The next data set is the inventories, but the spiders are still hanging in there, acting extremely well right now. Still no red candles. Apple's starting to see its first little red candle. So Apple is starting to see its first tiny red candle. AMD's catching a bounce. Spiders are still holding up very well. Still not a big bounce in oil. I'm still interested in oil, but we're now approaching that 10:03 time frame. I'll stay with this stream for another 7 minutes, but I do have a birthday to attend. So it's good that we've gotten 2 winners in our pocket this morning, all before 10 a.m. And then the Fed meeting should be very, very interesting at 2. I anticipate people don't want to hold longs into the market, so I'm anticipating a sell-off. Maybe it's not that big, but I do expect some people to move more defensively ahead of the Fed. Oil is coming down. Nat gas is still coming down. Wow, nat gas is just getting bludgeoned. Bludgeoned. And the way oil is moving is looking like a recession is in store. Spiders are seeing a little bit of resistance now. SPX is trading at 41.30, SPY's at 412. Nvidia is pushing. Meta is turning negative, but Nvidia is now pushing positive. The dollar just is setting a new low. Dollar is setting a new intraday low. So the dollar is weak today. Very, very weak again. It'll be interesting to see if the markets hold up here. But the Qs are hanging in there. Oil is starting to get a little bit of a bounce here. Tiny bounce. Alright guys, I'm going long the USO here because the dollar is weak. I'm going long 60.85, long the USO. Here comes the bounce. Here comes the bounce. Alright, I'm putting a stop loss of 5 cents in the money. A stop loss of 5 cents in the money. Here we go. I'm moving that up to another 10 cents in the money. Another 10 cents in the money. Alright, we're protecting this trade now because the dollar's hitting support. 61, let's see if we can get some more. I want to see if we can get 20 cents or more. Here we go, guys. Here we go. It's getting a nice little bounce. All right, I just got stopped out at 60.95. 60.95 for a win of 10 cents per share. I only had 300 shares there. It's just a starter position, but a win nonetheless. Another win, and now we're seeing some weakness come into the markets now. So Apple, this is primarily led by Apple. Apple's falling sharply, so we'll keep watch of that. AMD's catching a bounce. Oil's still bouncing. Nat gas is hitting some support here. UNG's interesting. It's at an interesting long level here. Hopefully it catches a big reversal and goes positive. Maybe this is a final shakeout in UNG, because you have had now on the daily chart, you just made a brand new low on UNG, but this is really a natural gas chart pattern. And what you did today was you filled that technical gap, and now you've done a full pretty much retrace of this move, or a nice 618 retrace, and it should find some support here. But again, the energy complex has been so weak up until this point. So it's now 10:07. We've banked 3 winners in our pocket. If you're still in USO, look at that bounce on USO. So look at that bounce. It's still going. If anyone was holding that, wonderful technical level. Wonderful. But look at the dollar now. The dollar is starting to try to uptick off that support. Did make a brand new low. Often patterns like to make a low and then try to reverse higher, but it's weak right now. It is super weak. Alright, I'm going to call this stream to an end with 3 for 3. Congrats today on a Fed day. It's pretty impressive to get 3 winners in our pocket on a Fed day. So great job there, and then certainly watch for that 2 p.m. and 2:30 volatility that will creep in. On that note, take care everybody. Definitely play it cautious, wait for that reaction move, and then look for pattern setup. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you on the charts tomorrow.